Hi, welcome to Human Centrics. I'm Gary Jones. Human Centrics is a new platform where we'll look at a range of topics concerning the human condition and society in general. We'll start by looking briefly at the complex subject of lying and the odd way that we as a society, even though we agree it's wrong in principle, seem to allow ourselves to be readily manipulated by it. Most of us agree that lying is a negative thing, but we often accept it as relatively benign and isolated in effect. It might have consequences for the liar and those being lied to, but as a society, we often stop there in our assessment of it. I want to talk about the broader implications. Let's consider the possibility that tacit acceptance of lying might actually bring about greater damage to us, those we love, and the wider society. An observation many of us recognize is that societal progress appears to be trapped within a one step forward, two steps back cycle. Why is this the case? Well, a major cause of this repetitive cycle is due to the actions of a privileged, self-asserting minority of people. This minority, in positions of fortune, strength, and influence, have historically recognized the majority of people in the world are powerless, weak, ignorant, compartmentalized in their thinking, and easily frightened into submission. This creates fertile conditions for almost limitless exploitation. It seems almost a given that lying would become a major tool the privileged minority use to manipulate society, populations, quell dissent, and then take the lion's share of wealth and power for themselves. Lying is just one element in the one step forward, two steps back cycle, but it's a major one. How can we as individuals become proactive and fight back against lying? Well, to start with, we have to be honest enough with ourselves to acknowledge that we all tell lies. This sounds really obvious, I know, but it's also a thought that makes people very uncomfortable. How often are we honest enough to acknowledge the fact that we lie to people who trust us and that we trust the lies offered by others? The plain truth is that all of us lie to a varying degree every single day, whether it be consciously or unconsciously. Lies can come in many different forms. They can be outright barefaced lies, half-truths, white lies, or by way of deliberately refusing to answer a question when the answer is known. Why do we do this? There are a whole range of reasons. Firstly, because we can. No one can know for sure whether or not we're telling the truth. No one can read our thoughts. Maybe another reason is to avoid a situation that might adversely affect us. Or maybe it's to curry favour with others. It might also be to save someone else from the pain of the truth, or be the result of fear of a negative reaction to the truth. Maybe it's to manipulate, or it might even be to further self-interest, or simply take out our frustrations on others. It might even be to conform to the accepted norms, or to hide oneself through anonymity. Ultimately, this action hides us from reality. We might, if we are being honest with ourselves, know these reasons to be true. And we all surely know the huge personal gain to be had through lying. But what about the knock-on effects, both personally and for society as a whole? Well, on a personal level, lying certainly contributes to upset, anguish, and trauma. It diminishes our mental health and general well-being. When you are lied to, how do you feel? Well, you may develop distrust of others, feel hurt and betrayed, feel a reduction in your self-esteem, withdraw from certain situations. You might experience self-doubt and adopt self-preservation defenses. It might feed an increase in your anxiety and anger levels and prompt you to seek revenge. You might even start lying yourself in an effort to redress. And where might this lead? Well, to despair, I would argue. In some people, it might lead to crime, self-harm, and suicide. Over time, it might reduce your faith in other people and promote refuge in self-interest. It may exacerbate the belief that nobody else matters more than me. It might lead to a reduction in interaction with other people, resulting in a big cost to society. Because you might choose to be around only those who share your point of view, in the vain hope to avoid being hurt again. It might even affect your desire and ability to expose yourself to diverse opinions and ideas, the result of which limits the compunction to empathize with others. Now, this sounds like a big cost, and it surely is. Now that we've looked briefly at some of the effects lying can bring about personally, what are some of the effects when people with influence lie? I'm talking about people with the power to make important decisions with wide-reaching consequences for society and even humanity. Now, I'm talking about people like politicians, lobbyists, military leaders, CEOs, executives of corporations, directors of financial institutions, business leaders, leaders of large organizations, wealthy private business owners, union leaders, ideologues, anyone pursuing self-interest. What are some of the reasons these people lie? Well, it seems obvious that many people just look to further self-interest, self-enrichment. Some people like to gain power over others, and this can be the result of mental illness or psychological compulsions, for example, narcissism, and we've all seen that recently in the world. The need to be seen as important or noticed. When somebody engages in this activity, it can lead them down a slippery slope and give way to compromise, hypocrisy, coercion, active stifling of the greater good. If the motivation is for personal and special interest gain, not acknowledging or supporting ideas that could be of benefit to the greater society. And what are the results of this? Well, detrimental effects to our society and environment, poverty, human rights violations, inequality, reductions in consumer protections prompting increased numbers of people being ripped off, avoidance of crucial action on climate change and the environment, unnecessary wars, oppression of minorities and subsequent resistance, adoption of force and coercion, deception to protect from the reality of promises given and decisions made. Ultimately, everyone loses through increase in desperation, increase in crime, self-destructive behaviour and habits, putting extra burdens on struggling services. A reduction in the sense that life is fair, a reduction in the willingness to help others in need. This can lead to an isolated life experience, cut off from the natural need we all have to socialise, and leads to counterintuitive decision making. Ultimately, the act of lying affects all of us. Because we live in a society, and despite the efforts of many to take for themselves exclusively, we all end up being affected by the societal consequences of lying. It's impossible for any of us to escape. Every lie-induced decision has implications for us all. Many say society is all about self-interest and economics. They argue that the most important ingredient is managing the economy, and that with a strong economy, the rest of society's issues will somehow take care of themselves. In my opinion, what they are arguing for is self-serving, dog-eat-dog, where those who can grab for what they can and take, and to hell with the rest of us. These greedy, selfish people have given up on humanity and society appearing to believe there is no chance human beings can achieve better relations between each other. Well, at least they themselves can't. They choose just to take for themselves. Now, of course, economics has an important part to play in a modern society, but it is only one part of the many required for society to function well. We must face this fact. The more someone is on the economic take, the less there is for everyone else. When you gain, someone else loses. There are exceptions, of course, those who engage in philanthropy. Some of the privileged believe in giving back to society, but one should always question the motivation behind their actions. Unfortunately, the honest ones are in steady decline. Nevertheless, lying plays an enormous role in allowing those in powerful positions to make their self-interest behaviour possible. So in concluding this episode, in which I've only very lightly touched on an extremely complex issue, the priority would be to encourage you to become actively involved in fighting against the negative results lying affords us all. Please, don't condone lying by anyone, especially not those who have position of influence over us. Lying is not contained, isolated, or benign in effect. The effects are wide-reaching, powerful, and destructive. Here's my challenge to you. The next time someone asks you to take their word for something important, or to take it on trust, engage your critical thinking capacity and stop for a moment to remember. Trust is to be earned, not just given. Then ask yourself, what do they have to gain? What does their past behaviour tell you about their honesty? Are you holding them to account for the veracity of what they are telling you now? Make your judgment one that's fair, not one that is blind. Do a little digging. Look at the facts. Examine the evidence. Don't be so trusting that you let a self-serving opportunist impact your life. I'm not suggesting that we be overly suspicious of everyone. Just be careful. We all need to be more vigilant in this regard, rather than shifting the responsibility to others. It's our society, and we all have a role to play. Think what a better world this could be if we all started to call out the liars and self-servers and hold them to account. Thanks for watching, and stay strong. Till next time.